Brian Tracy is one of the world's leading experts on success and personal development. As chairman and CEO of Brian Tracy International, Brian has consulted with more than 1,000 companies during his storied career. He is also a keynote speaker and has addressed more than 5 million people in 5,000 talks and seminars throughout the US and Canada and worldwide. Brian is a top-selling author of over 70 books on topics including sales, time management, personal development, relationships, and business, and his books have been translated into dozens of languages. He has also written and produced more than 300 audio and video learning programs, including the best-selling Psychology of Achievement, which has been translated into more than 28 languages. Brian has captivated audiences in over 107 countries on 6 continents with his profound insights, practical strategies, and unwavering belief in the human potential for greatness. In addition to being a friend, I consider Brian one of the greatest positive influences on my life, and it's truly an honor to have him on the show. Welcome, Brian, and thanks for joining us on Life Excellence.
Thank you, Brian. It's such a pleasure to be with you. You and I have been friends for over 20 years now, and we've sort of hit it off the very moment that we met, and it's never changed from then to now. So I'm very happy to be with you, and I hope that I can contribute something to our listeners that maybe they've not heard before.
Well, you definitely will, and it's an honor to have you on the show. Brian, you've dedicated most of your adult life to the field of success and personal development. Let's jump right to the chase. What do successful people, high achievers, do that causes them to achieve greater success than anyone else?
Well, it's very simple. What I learned very early in the game was the idea of the self-concept, and that's the way that you think about yourself. It's your combination of your thoughts, your visions, your goals, your mission, and each person has a self-concept, a way that they think about themselves and their potential relative to the world. And this self-concept is formed from early childhood, and it continues to form as you take in new information. So probably the greatest discovery of all is that you become what you think about most of the time. You become what you think about most of the time. So the question I ask, and you've heard, is what do you think about most of the time? And whatever it is, you have a tendency to move toward it, and you attract it toward yourself. And if you think about becoming wealthy, you're going to become wealthy. You're going to see, you're going to have a sort of a sense for opportunities to become wealthy. You're going to read magazines, you're going to see little things. I remember one multimillionaire started off with nothing, and his goal was to become wealthy, and he saw a little ad at the bottom of a column in a newspaper for imported bicycles. Many years ago, when we had mostly Schwinn and normal bicycles in the U.S. Well, these were bicycles manufactured in Europe, and they were racing bicycles. And so it was a little ad saying, interested in distributing these. So he wrote to them, and they said, sure. So he set up a little store, and he began to import these bicycles, and it took off. So he opened another bike store, and within 5 years, he was a millionaire, and he had bike stores, 30, 40 bike stores around the country. And you think, well, how could somebody do something so unusual? Because he has set up his mind, so it started to attract into his life opportunities that he would never have seen in the absence of that goal to become wealthy.
And you mentioned that starts at a very early age, how we think about ourselves, the things we think about. I know you didn't exactly have a privileged life growing up. How did you begin learning about success, and what eventually caused you to start writing, speaking, and then devoting your entire career to helping people achieve greater success?
Well, what I started doing is I became hungry for success. I didn't have any money. I didn't graduate from high school. I worked at laboring jobs, but I began to go to seminars and workshops. And when audio programs hit the market back in the 70s, I began to listen to audio programs which were full of success ideas by other people who, just like me, who had started off with very little. I began to read success books and take notes from those success books. And more than anything else, I got to back up and then come forward. I had a man come up to me at a seminar. We had 2,500 people at this really highfalutin seminar in Washington, D.C. Last month. And he came up and he said, "You're Brian Tracy." In a very crowded hotel lobby. And so I said, "Yes." He said, "You changed my life. You made me rich." And he beamed. And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What was it that made you rich?" He said, "It was the goals." He said, "I never understood the power of goals, almost like cannons going through your life, until I read your material. So I decided to do it. What did it cost me? Nothing. I've already read the book. So I wrote down what I wanted, and I made a list of everything I needed to do, and I organized the list by priorities, and then I began working on the goals." He said, "My whole life changed forever." Now, the reason I tell that story is that I've heard that at least 1,000 times. I hear it all over the world. I get letters in multiple languages. I speak French, German, and Spanish. And so I get letters in those languages. Plus, I get letters in other languages. And people in my seminars come up to me and they say the same magic words: "You changed my life. You made me rich. You changed my life. You made me rich." And it works for everyone. This is the most amazing darn thing. It's not that it's a rare occasion. What you do is you decide what you want, and you and I have talked about this a lot. Decide what you want, and then write it down, and then make a list of everything that you can think of that you'll have to do to achieve it. And as you think of new things, add them to the list, and then organize the list by priority of all the things. What should I do first? What should I do second? And so on. And then take action. And every single day, do at least one thing that moves you one step closer to your most important goal. And it's quite astonishing. Soon you get into a habit. You get up in the morning. You get into the rhythm of it. You start thinking about reading. People give you recommendations. People will open doors for you. They won't even know what your goal is, but because of this law of attraction, you start to attract into your life people, circumstances, ideas. It's the most wonderful thing. But the starting point is you have to decide exactly what you want to accomplish sometime in the future and write it down. There's something about writing. When you write things down in the present tense as though they were already a reality, that sets up a force field of energy in the universe that begins to attract into your life everything that you need to make that goal come true.
Brian, goal setting is such a powerful strategy. You teach lots of tools and techniques and strategies for achieving success. None more important, I don't think, than goal setting. And as you're talking, it sounds pretty simple. You write down the things you want, you create a plan for achieving them, break it down into small, manageable steps that any of us can do, and then you begin doing it. Just like if you're going to go for a walk around the block, you start with the first step and then the next step and then the next one after that. But as you were talking, I was thinking about how simple it is and yet how so many people don't do it. What is it? You've been in business for a very long time. You've been teaching about personal development, success, and achievement for a very long time. And it's one of my frustrations, and maybe it is for you too, that at a time and a place where we know more about goal setting, we know more about personal development, know more about success, however we define that, whether we're talking about business success or career success or relationship success or health or fitness, yet there are so many people not doing those things. Can you speak to that? Does that frustrate you, or how do you think?
Jim Rohn had this wonderful one-liner. He said, "Things that are easy to do are easy not to do as well." And setting and working on your goals each day is easy to do. It's not as if we're asking you to sell everything that you own and spend it all on some wonderful process. We're not asking you to spend a single penny. What I do in my seminars is I would say to my clients, we'd have about 30 to 40 people. They would come and spend 4 days with me, one day every 3 months. And I would take them through a series of exercises. The very first day, I would say to them is, I guarantee this coaching program is if you don't double your income and double your time off over the course of the next 12 months, I'll give you your money back. And I charged $5,000 for 4 days. And I included the materials and the workshop and so on. And I had 1,000 entrepreneurs go through that program over 7 years, and not one ever asked for the money back. In fact, what they said was, because if you start off with the goals, then what happens is your whole life changes. And I have something here, which I use. Here it is, my favorite. This is what I used to hand out. I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to your new best friend. Your best friend is a spiral notebook like you would get at school. And what you're going to do is this, is you're going to open it up and you're going to write down 10 goals, to write down today's date, and write down 10 goals that you would like to achieve in the next 12 months. You can write longer term goals, but just for this exercise, make them 1 year goals and write them in the present tense as though they were already a reality. You see, your subconscious and superconscious mind can only function on something that is specified in the present tense. So write, I earn this amount of money. I achieve this net worth. I weigh this number of pounds. I make this level of sales. I live in this kind of home. In other words, be specific and be present tense as though it is you're reporting a fact. And so I'd hand them out, and everybody would fill it out. I said, now, this is your new best friend. So tomorrow morning, when you get up, the first thing you do is you take your workbook and you turn the page and you do it again. But you write down your 10 goals without looking back at what you wrote yesterday. And you're going to find every day the goals will change. The description will change. The order of priority will change. And write down 10 goals. Tomorrow, do the same thing. And do this every single day without looking back. And do it for 30 days. And see what happens. I never had to give a refund because everybody who did this doubled their income within 30 days, sometimes within 7 days. It was so phenomenal. They couldn't believe it because now what you've done is you've taken all your mental powers, which are extraordinary. You know, your brain has 1 billion cells in it. And what it has now is all these cells are focused like a great cannonade. They're focused on bringing you your most important goals. And things start to happen around you that would never have happened if you hadn't written them down. And so as long as I could get people to write down their 10 goals, I never had to give them their money back. because 100% of them doubled their income, and far faster than 1 year. Most of them doubled their income within 30 days. Sometimes, as I said, within 7 days. Now, so why is it that people don't do this? Well, they do it in my coaching program because everybody else is doing it. And they think, well, I have to do it. I mean, I'm sitting here, everybody else is doing it. I might as well do it. And then they see things within a day. They see changes take place. They get phone calls at the break that are surprising. And they think, well, all right, he may be exaggerating, but for 30 days, I can write down my 10 goals. And so they do. And suddenly the nickel drops. Oh my God, I can do things that I never dreamed possible. And the thing is, just do it. Those are some of my favorite words. Just do it.
I love that. You say just do it. And another one that I really like that's even shorter is action now. Action now. And it's the same concept. That goal setting exercise that you're talking about is extremely powerful. And I'd love to say that I've done it since the day that you introduced it to me. Yeah. I do it off and on. But one of the things that I'll add, and you said just do it for 30 days, just try it for 30 days. And what happens within those 30 days is a couple things. One, you really develop the habit and the momentum. So just like exercise or healthy eating or anything else that you do for 30 days, you develop the habit of doing that. And so you continue that. And the other thing that happens is the first couple days, those goals change. And I think you mentioned that or alluded to it. But by 30 days, you hone in on really the very most important goals to you. And then it becomes crystal clear that those are the goals. And then you create the action plan around those goals. So you have those things happening, that the phone calls that come and the emails and the opportunities that pour in and doors that open and people that cross your paths just because you've written them down. But the other thing is that you're starting in your own mind to think about the development of those goals, the achievement of those goals, the plans that you need to make, the steps that you need to take. And I think most people understand the concept of goal setting, at least generally. And there are a lot of people that set goals. But I know one thing that happens is they stumble into obstacles along the way. And a lot of people just sort of give up. So they hit the first obstacle, the first stumbling block, and maybe they keep going a little bit, but then they hit another one, and then they just give up on their goals. What was it that Mike Tyson said? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So given that obstacles and setbacks are inevitable, and you and I know that they are, what are some things that our listeners and viewers can do to overcome those obstacles that we know are going to show
Well,
up?
the most important thing is your attitude toward it. So if you have an obstacle or a setback or a temporary failure, or you lose all of your money, then what you say is, this is a very interesting lesson. And this lesson has been sent to me to teach me something that will help me to achieve my goal. And nobody is going to achieve a goal that's worthwhile without falling on their face lots of times. The critical thing is, what do you do with the setback? And the answer is, you analyze it and say, what can I learn from this? What lessons does this contain? And what you do is, you find sometimes, I had one gentleman, a friend of mine, very wealthy guy today, but he and two of his friends in their 20s started a business, and they worked really, really hard, and it was running along. And then they got into problems, and they overspent, and the business went broke, and he had to move back in with his mother at the age of 25. And he did something which I just loved to hear. He sat down with a workbook like this, and he said, now, what did I learn from this experience? And he wrote down everything that he learned. And it turned out there's about 20 to 25 different things that he learned about people, about money, about customers, about trusting others, about accepting a person's opinion without checking. One of the things, if you've been in business for any period of time, there's two words that get burned into your soul, and the words are due diligence. Due diligence. This is where you check into a business opportunity in depth and careful and look at it. And all intelligent people have at least one negative experience where they just didn't do their homework. They didn't do their homework, and it bit them in the bum. And from then on, smart people, and the smartest and richest people of all, do their due diligence. They have a series of questions they ask. They have someone else also ask the questions and approach it from a different perspective. Because the time to make the right decision is before you get in so deep that you can't get out. And due diligence means just check your facts. And anybody who wants to sell you a deal wants you to buy it, and you have to be very cautious. It may be a good deal, but your job is to check every single detail. So anyway, so what he did is he sat down and he wrote up all the things he learned, and then he went back and started his business again. Within a few years, his business was very successful. By the time he was in his 40s, he was a multi-millionaire. He moved to Palm Springs because he liked to play golf, bought a beautiful home on a golf course, and he plays golf every day. And he retired for the rest of his life. He said what enabled him to retire was the going broke the first time, and then doing the analysis and looking at every mistake that he made and making sure. And he would review those lessons. And I did the same thing. Whenever I see a good idea, don't wait until Christmas or next year or vacation or something else. Sit down now and do it now. If somebody gives you a book and said, this book changed my life in some area, time management, relationships, kids, and so on. By the way, the most important thing that we have in life is our children, our family, and our children. When we were raising our children, we read over 30 books on how to raise children well. And one book I still remember because I was talking to someone recently was called How to Really Love Your Child. And it's
Mm.
by a child psychologist, How to Really Love Your Child. And that is such a wonderful piece of writing, is how to boost their self-esteem, how to listen to them, how to ask them questions, how to reinforce them, just how to really love your child. And it's available anywhere for $10. And it would totally transform your child raising, totally transform your relationship with your children. Just something to throw out. And why? Because that's so important. But don't say, well, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll read that book someday. No, do it now. Do it now. It's $10 for heaven's sakes. Whack, whack, whack. It's not you're not going to go bankrupt if you don't like the book, but if you really care about your kids. And I've read more than 30 books. My wife and I read more than 30 books on the same subject. This was the best. So I can save you 29 books. Just read number 30. And so now, I wanted to tell you something that's important. One of the things that I've done a lot of writing on is millionaires. I wrote a book a few years ago called $1 Million Habits. And there's several books that have been written on habits, and they've been very popular. My book is better than anything that's been written. It's got 12 chapters, and it has about 10 to 12 habits on areas like physical fitness, making more money, building a business, working with people, sales, management. There's 12 chapters and an average of 12 lessons per chapter. And the book is absolutely excellent, is $1 Million Habits. So one of the things that people need to do is they need to learn what other people have learned. And I want to share an idea because one of the habits that people have is they want to become wealthy. I joke with my friends, my audiences all over the world. I call it's the 3M factor: make more money. I want to make more money. I do talks like this, 60 to 90-minute talks all over the world. Sometimes just in English, sometimes in translation. I do them in every European language. I did one for something like 800,000 entrepreneurs in Europe last month. And what happens is there's translation in the background, and they all call into this. And I asked the organizer, what would they like me to talk about? They said, all they want is to make more money. I said, okay, let's talk about making more money. When I was young and poor, I made a decision to become a millionaire. I said, no, so how do you become a millionaire? Well, the answer is you have to increase your productivity, your performance, your output, your income by a certain percentage every day, every week, every month. And what I figured out was that if you could increase your performance by 0.5% a day, 5 days a week, that'd be 2.5%. In a month, it would be 10%. And so what I showed people is if I'll talk about the formula, but what they do is they start working on increasing their productivity by 0.5% a day and 2.5%, 10% a month. Then they start to compound. And Einstein said compounding is the greatest power in the universe. So if you start to become just a little bit more productive, you start a little earlier, you work a little harder, you stay a little later, you upgrade your skills in critical areas, and so on. I'll tell you one thing that changed my life when I was knocking on doors and selling was I said, of all the skills that would help me the most, what would be the most valuable? And it was closing sales. Is closing the sale. No pressure, no tricks, no anything else. Just learning how to ask professionally for the customer to buy at the end of the presentation. So I made this a major study, and I spent 6 months. I read everything I could. I sent away for books, and I read them. And my closing of sales, which has been struggling and struggling, started to get better and better and better. Within the next 2 years, I increased my income 10 times. And I began to train other salespeople. Here's how to ask for the order in a professional, friendly, courteous way. And they did. And their sales went up and up and up. It's the most amazing darn thing. So one of the questions that you always ask is, what one skill, if I was absolutely excellent at it, would have the greatest impact on my income? And there's always one. And it may be closing sales. And some years later, when I decided to speak, I said, what would be a good subject for me to speak on? Closing sales. So I put an ad in the paper and I said, come to my seminar, unconditionally guaranteed, $95 a person. And 100 people came to the seminar at 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 to 9. And I did a workbook and I laid it out. I handed it out to them, and it just blew them away. They'd never heard of the process or the procedure, the questions that you ask, the relationship that you form, and so on. That became a book. It became an audio program, became a video program. Literally thousands, maybe millions of people have been through that program in multiple languages. Because if you can't close the sale, then what happens is you lose your enthusiasm for calling on people in the first place. So if you think that you're not going to be able to close the sale, then it decreases your motivation to even make calls in the first place. But if you know that you can ask for the sale, you're out there knocking on doors like a crazy man. So I came up with this idea that if you could increase your productivity, performance, and output by 25% per year, a very simple formula, and 25% per year times 10 years, with compounding, you could increase your income 10 times. And I worked at it myself, and it did. I taught it to other people, and they did. It's the most amazing darn thing that if you just become a little bit better each day and a little bit better each week and a little bit better each month, you start to get better and better. It's like physical fitness. You start to go from being unfit to running marathons. You start to go from an average income to earning 3, 5, 10 times what you ever earned in your life before. And it's just natural. So those are the things that I began to teach people. And the wonderful thing is, as I taught it to people, I practiced it myself to prove that it worked. And if it didn't work, I wouldn't teach it. And it reminds me of a story by the humorist, what was his name? He said, it's very simple to make money in the stock market. He said, you buy a stock, and when it goes up, you sell it. And if it don't go up, don't buy it. Have you heard that one?
I have. That's good. This is all terrific information. And I was thinking, I heard somebody say about you, and this was years and years ago, that you provide more actionable ideas and content than any other speaker. And it's absolutely true. I think about the things that you've shared just during our time together, and we have lots more time, but very simple, easy to apply, yet extremely powerful techniques and strategies. And so I really appreciate that, Brian. I know one of the big challenges in the world today is attention. Right? We have these distraction devices, our phones that everybody has, and they're attached to us like appendages, and they dominate our attention with emails, social media, games, entertainment, that kind of thing. And so it's easier than ever to get distracted, which of course causes us to procrastinate on all the important things that you've been talking about. What suggestions do you have for helping us to stay focused and increase our productivity, the incremental productivity increases that you were talking about,
Yes.
rather than being hampered by activities that cause us to be less productive?
Well, I am the best-selling author on time management in the world. I have sold 3.5 million copies in 55 languages in 84 countries. And so I know a lot about the subject. The publishers like me a lot. If I say I've got a book, they can immediately check and see that I have sold millions and millions of copies of my books. And people who read the books, like the gentleman I started talking about earlier, he read the book, he couldn't believe how helpful just a single idea would be. Here's what we know, is 50% of working time is wasted. It's wasted on idle chit-chat, iPhone. It's wasted on lunches. It's wasted on all kinds of things. And the other 50%, people work on low value, no value tasks. And as a result, at the end of the day, they say, well, I worked all day long and I didn't get anything done. There's an interesting sort of metaphor that I use. When you're young, you go off to school for the first time and you're very nervous and kids cry and the parents have to hold on to them and so on. And then you go into the classroom and what do you see? You see a whole bunch of other kids. What do you do with other kids? You play. You play. So then very soon with the second or third day of school is you realize that school is a play place where you play with all your friends and the teachers have to work on you to keep you focused on learning something. So now you go up through school, I say, and you get into high school and you start to play different games with your friends. And then you get into university and then you can play unsupervised with your friends. And then you get out and you get your first job and you're nervous. So many people are actually physically ill on the first day of their first job. They actually can't go to work. They phone in sick because they're so nerve-wracking. So you go to your first job and you go in and you're nervous and they introduce you around to the other co-workers and what do you notice? This is like school. What do you do at school? You play. It's a playtime. And they say, would you like to go out for lunch? Would you like to go out for drinks? How are you doing? Did you watch this program last night on television? And these become your new schoolmates. And what you do is you start to spend 50% of your time playing with your friends. And so what I do is I tell people, stop. Realize that work time is not playtime, it's work time. You can play before and after work, but you don't play at work. At work, what you do is you get to work. And one of the things I say is leave things off. Leave things off. Is come start your work and do your most important task. Do one task, and if it takes you an hour or 3 hours or half a day, put your head down and just work nonstop on one task. If somebody says, how are you doing? You say, doing fine, but I've got to get back to work. Back to work, back to work, back to work. Send people off. Why don't you go and talk to him or her? They have no future, and they'd be very happy to have you go with them and have no future. But you focus on getting the work done. And I promise you, the people who can help you in your career notice whether or not you're doing the work. They always notice. They notice in the corner of their eye. That's what gets people promoted. That's what gets people more important jobs to do. So don't mess around and play with your friends like school. What you do is you put your head down and you complete your most important task first thing. And after that, you can go and take a break and talk to your friends and have some coffee and then get back to work and hit it. Just hit it. Just keep working on your most important task. Imagine that your boss is going to be standing right there at your shoulder watching you work. And because your boss is. Bosses, for some reason, they know exactly who's doing the work. They know exactly who's making a valuable contribution. And do the same thing. Start every day with the most important task. I always say this. Imagine that you're going to be called out of town for a month. And you can only complete one task before you are called out of town. What one task would you want to be sure to complete? And whatever it is, start on that as soon as you get into the office and work nonstop on that task until it's done. And then you ask, if I could only do one more task before I was called out of town for a month, what would be task number 2? And you hit that. And you all day long, you keep hitting the most important task. And what happens is you start to feel great about yourself. You earn the respect and esteem of all the people who can influence your career. And you earn your own respect and esteem. You feel really good about yourself. You feel valuable. And then you ask yourself, what can I do to upgrade my skills, to become even better at what I'm doing? Go to your boss and ask, these are the most important things I feel I have to do. Please organize them by your priority. If I could only do one, which one would you want me to do? If I could only do 2, which would be number 2? Your boss will love you for this. And surprise, surprise, most bosses haven't really thought about it that well. And if you help them to set priorities on your work, they will really appreciate you. And then they'll start setting priorities for other people. Then they're going to want to go and have lunch with you and have drinks with you after work. Then they're going to want to talk to you about bigger projects that are coming down the pike. And I know this is true because I did it in my own career, starting at the bottom with nothing, with no education, no money. I just got to the top by focusing on the most important thing I could do and do it nonstop, all day long and weekends if necessary, to get it done. Peter Drucker said the main thing, the main word in all of business is results. So always be thinking, what are the most important results I can get for my company, whether you own the company or not? And what would be the order of priority? And then what you do is you start on your most important task and work at it nonstop. Your whole life will change and you'll be happy.
So a lot of what you're talking about is really intentionality, isn't it? And I don't know if the opposite of intentionality is distraction, but I think there are so many people who aren't doing those things that you were just describing. But if you are intentional, if you are focused, if you have your attention on the most important things, it just seems like you set yourself so far apart from everybody else, especially in a day and age where not only are people playing at work, but more people than ever are working remotely. And who knows what they're doing when they're working remotely, right? Probably not working.
So imagine somebody runs in a race and it's a very competitive race and they're running and they come in first. What do they call that person? The
Winner.
winner. They call that person the winner. Well, here's what we know psychologically is whenever you start and complete a task, you actually feel like a winner. You get a jolt of testosterone, of endorphins, and two other dopamine and one other chemical. And each of these all together makes you feel a little bit high, makes you feel happy, makes you feel powerful, positive. Task completion is like a miracle. Now, if you complete a little task, you wash the dishes after dinner, and you look at the kitchen, it's all cleaned up. It makes you happy, gives you a little buzz, if you like. If you complete a more important task, gives you a bigger buzz. If you complete your most important task without stopping, it gives you a rush. It makes you feel happy, and it's called nature's happy drug. And there's a wonderful series of studies called positive addiction. And what you can do is you can actually become addicted to these drugs, but these drugs are only positive. They only make you happy and give you energy and make you smarter and more alert. So when you get this rush, you want to do something else. Again, the worst thing people will remember that they finished a task late at night, maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night. They finish the task and they feel great. And they want to start a new task at 10, 11 o'clock at night because this feeling, this rush that you get. And so successful people create an environment where they feel like winners all the time. They start and complete tasks. And the more important the task they start and complete, the louder is the applause from the audience, the more they feel like winners. And they can hardly wait to do another task. And you'll find the best companies. And I worked with IBM more than 30 times back in the beginning of my career. And I love IBM. IBM structured their whole work environment so that people were always starting and completing important tasks and being recognized for it and being promoted. Start, complete, recognition, promotion. Start, complete, recognition, promote. People loved working for IBM. IBM actually built cities, and everybody in the city would be from IBM. And once they had started working with them, they didn't ever plan to leave for their whole lives because they loved working with IBM, and all the other people were working in the same conditions. So they were all happy to be starting and finishing tasks and working with other people and starting and finishing. Everybody was laughing. I remember one case where my clients had they would go to work on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays. And the IBM was really big about vacations and taking time off and getting enough rest and so on. And so they told them, you cannot come to work on the weekends. You can work during the week, but you can't go to work on the week. And they started sneaking in. They'd sneak in the back doors. They'd have somebody inside that would get a key. And so believe it or not, they had to have guards watching the building around to stop people from coming to work on the weekends because they got so much pleasure out of completing tasks that you couldn't keep them away. Imagine an environment like that, highly paid, highly respected, and people love to go to work. Well, when you start to set priorities on your work and you start and complete, and this is important. Solzhenitsyn talked about this in one of his books. Many people will complete a task to the 95% level and say, well, I'll get it done tomorrow. I'll wrap it up tomorrow. No, this is one of the greatest dangers of all, because now you're developing a negative habit, and the negative habit is non-completion. Task completion is the key to success in life. It's to finish the task 100%. Then you can take a break. And if you do that on a regular basis, it becomes a habit for you to constantly keep yourself up. You're buoyant, you're happy. One of the things in my company, and you've seen that, is you walk into the company and everybody laughs. It's a happy place. And when everybody that works with us is happy. Why? It's because their work is structured in such a way that they're constantly injecting themselves with these positive endorphins. They're constantly feeling good about themselves. And so it's very important for other people to do that themselves. Make a list, set priorities, start with your most important task, and work nonstop until that task is complete. Keep doing this until it becomes an addiction, a positive addiction. This positive addiction will make you not only rich, but it'll make you happy as well.
Absolutely. That's great, Brian. One of the things that I've always admired about you is your commitment to achieving success in every area of life. So not just career and financial success, and we've certainly been talking about that, but also building strong relationships, which you mentioned, with your family and friends, staying healthy and physically fit, and continually growing both personally and professionally, and also developing a strong spiritual faith. Brian, there was a time in your life when you were traveling extensively. I know you've backed away from that a little bit now, but it must have been challenging for you with that, the heavy demands of travel and business, to maintain a healthy balance in all of those other areas. And I think a lot of our listeners and viewers share that. What advice do you have for people who are in demand in their careers and businesses? So they're in the thick of their career, the thick of their business growth, and find it challenging to devote proper attention to other areas of their lives, which obviously is important too.
Well, there's two words that I was going to share with you. Two of my favorite words. One is clarity, is be absolutely clear about the most important things you can be doing. As you know, in my coaching program, I used to say, I'll ask you to make a list of everything that you do in the course of a week or a month. And the average person does between 20 and 30 different tasks. Right now, if you look at this list of tasks and you say, if you were to be called out of town for a month and you could only do one task on the list, which one task would contribute the greatest value to your company? And that usually pops out at you quite clearly. So you put a circle around it. So now what if you could only do two tasks? What would be the second task that would contribute the most value to your company? And go through it. And this takes a little bit more effort. And then you find it down here. And then the third question is, if you could only do three tasks, what would be number three? And I call this the law of three. And the law of three says that if you have 20 or 30 things to do, and some people have 40 or 50 things that they do, the three will be worth 90% of everything you do. Worth 90%. And I told you I worked with IBM, and I liked IBM, and IBM got into trouble in the late 80s. And when I started working with them in the mid 80s, they had 82% of the world market for computers. 82%. I mean, they were the giant far and away. Other companies were just small company, incidental, but they had 82%. And then they got into a turbulent storm, and they brought in the wrong people as the new president, and he brought in the wrong people, and so on. And the company went just like a boat in an ocean storm. They started to lose money, lose sales, lose everything. The story is quite interesting, but they brought in a new president, a man named Lou Gerstner, who worked for RJR Nabisco. And they called him the cookie salesman. He said, quite honestly, I don't know anything about computers. I've never used one. I don't know how to turn them on. He said, but I do know about sales and marketing. And what he did is he reoriented the company so that the most important people in the company were once more the salespeople. And everything was focused on the salespeople and the sales managers. And he introduced the law of three. He said, and every single person and every single manager used the law of three every day. As they would ask them, what are you doing? How you're doing it? How's it going? What are your three biggest tasks? And are you working on them? And within a year, the company went from losing billions to earning billions and came back up to world championship. But the critical thing was the law of three. It's one of the most important principles for success in life. What are your three biggest and most important tasks? And whatever they are, write them down. And there's 1, 2, and 3. And then you start with number 1. And you do number 1 until it's 100% complete. It doesn't sound very complicated, but it's life transforming. It's business transforming. And the biggest and best companies in the world have discovered that. Just keep everybody focused and rewarded and encouraged and praised and everything for doing task number 1, number 2, and number 3.
And so how can we apply those concepts to other areas of life? So we apply that in business, and that helps us with our careers or with business success. How can we make sure that we're giving sufficient attention to other areas of life, like our family, our health, fitness, relationships, faith, those areas?
Well, what I have discovered is that my family, my wife and children, are number 1 for me. It's never been different. I've never wondered. I've never compromised. They're always number 1. So whenever there's a choice between a member of my family and my work, the member of the family takes precedence. And so I know that, and they know that. And so therefore, if I have to be away, they know they're more important than anything, but I have to be away on occasion because of my work. And so my kids and my wife are completely content because they know that they're first. They come first. And that's the starting point of a really great life. And then the second part, of course, your spiritual life. What Barbara and I started doing many years ago is reading 1 to 2 hours every day in spiritual material. And that had an enormously powerful, positive effect on our lives. We'd get up every morning and read spiritually. And then our kids would start to get up and read spiritually. And our house became a reading house. We had a rule, and this was back in the days when people went to bookstores all the time, is we would go to bookstores and we said there's never a budget for books. You can buy any book or any number of books that you want. Every time we go, and they would always run to the books department that was age appropriate, and they would buy books and order books, and each one of them had a library of more than 300 books. And they would buy their books and read their books, and sometimes they would voluntarily turn off the television and just read. And that's a wonderful thing.
I'm smiling as you say that because I know you've always been a voracious reader for as long as I've known you, and an active learner. With the world evolving as fast as it is, faster than ever before, how important is continuous learning and personal and professional development?
Well, the fact is that you accomplish on the outside what you're prepared for on the inside. If you haven't prepared yourself on the inside, you will not get an opportunity to use your non-existent knowledge. So therefore, every time, and I learned this studying the metaphysics, in fact, I'm rereading them now, is you will never learn something new without somehow getting a chance to use that new material. There's something in the universe that sets up a force field of energy that brings into your life opportunities to learn the new material. And so you could be reading something in an airline magazine on a plane, and within a few days, something's going to happen, and that new piece of information is going to have a place in your life. It's going to be, you say, I just read about that the other day. It's the most amazing darn thing. You'll never learn something without getting a chance to use it. And so the more things you learn, the more opportunities you will get to use more things. And then they will cross-fertilize each other. And then you'll learn more things and more things. And then you'll start to get referrals. And people will, I wrote a book called The Luck Factor, and recorded the book, and it's a great book because it's all these, where does luck come from? And one of the things that I found in my research is that often great luck comes from a chance meeting with a stranger. That was a chance meeting with a stranger, and you're chatting with them, and you ask them a question, or they ask you a question. Have you ever thought about this or thought about that? And that is an insight that for the rest of your life, you remember that time where you spoke to that person on the bus stop, and your life is different ever after. So the more you expose yourself to opportunities to learn, the more likely it is you're going to expose yourself to something that can change your life.
That's terrific. Brian, you're in your 70s now. I know your travel schedule has slowed down, although you've told stories of recent speaking engagements, and I think a lot of those are online. And thankfully, that's maybe one good thing that's come out of COVID is the ability to do so much more online, to broadcast all over the world. And you're still actively engaged in your business. I know you're speaking all the time. You're doing shows like this. You still have events, occasional events in San Diego. What keeps you going? What drives you?
I love my work, and I think that's all my life. I had the good fortune of doing stuff that I love to do with people like yourself, who I really enjoy. And so whenever you and I have a chance to get together, I mean, it's always friendly, it's enjoyable, it's spontaneous. And the people that I work with who are interested in learning and growing and becoming better and being more successful, which has been my major field of study for 50 years, they're a great pleasure to be with. I mean, these are our people. These are the people that believe in the things that we believe in and are working toward the things that we work toward. And then you want to share ideas, because if you really like your ideas, you want to share them with others so others can take these ideas and use them as well. So it's a great pleasure. It's not even work, really. If you're in this kind of a field, or any field that is right for you, it's more of a joy than it is hard labor.
It's incredibly rewarding, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brian, I appreciate you very much. You know that. And I'm so incredibly grateful for our time together today. What final thoughts or advice would you like to share with our listeners and viewers who are on their success journey?
Well, I would go back to make more money. And there's a very simple formula that I have taught over the years. And if you practice this formula, you will make more money. You will double and triple your income, and far faster than you can imagine. And it's very simple, is write down 10 goals that you'd like to accomplish in the next 12 months or so. And then go over that and say, if I could only accomplish one goal on this list, which one goal would have the most positive effect on my life of all these goals? Just pick one, and it'll usually jump out at you. It'll solve your major problem. It'll deal with your major worry. It'll answer your major ambition, but it'll jump out at you. And so then you put that and write it at the top of a clean piece of paper. And you say, now, what are all the things that I could do? And then, no, I'm sorry. You say, all right, now, what is my date of completion for this? When do I want to accomplish it? And you should have a goal that is achievable within 12 months. Then the third part is you say, and how will I measure it? How will I know I've achieved that goal? So you pick the goal, you write it down, set a deadline, and make it measurable. So those three, if all you do is those three, your life will change just almost overnight. Things will start to happen. The phone will ring. It's just miraculous. Step number 4 is make a list of everything that you can think of to achieve the goal. And as you think of new things, keep writing them on the list and keep writing until you can't think of anything more. This may take a few days, may take a week or a month, but just keep going back to that list. And if you get a new idea, write it down, write it down. Then step number 5 is organize the list by priority. What should I do first? What should I do second? What should I do third? Organize the list like a plan. There's a book, by the way, called it's called it'll come to me in a second. It's a wonderful book, but basically it says it's called the Checklist Manifesto. The Checklist Manifesto. Have you read that?
Yes, I have.
By Gawande, a doctor, and it is simple, short, and what it says is that everything in life is done by checklists. And the way that you can dramatically increase the speed and the quality of your results is making a list, a checklist of everything you need to do it in sequence. So now you've got your list and you organize it by sequence. What do I need to do first, second, third, and so on. Step number 6 is take action on your list. Now it's time to put the pedal to the metal, as we used to say. Now take action on your list. And step number 7, which is the most important of all, is do something every day that moves you at least one step toward achieving your most important goal. So therefore, write it down, set a deadline, make it measurable, make a list of everything you need to do, organize the list by priority. Number 6 is take action on your list. And number 7 is do something every day. That sounds very simple, but it is life transforming. Every time you do one step or take one step towards your goal, it's like winning in front of a large audience. The cheers are endorphins and all kinds of dopamines that cause you to feel wonderful about yourself and motivate you to do it more and motivate you to do it more. And pretty soon you become a goal-achieving machine. You just get up in the morning and you think about what you're going to accomplish today, and you can hardly wait to get started.
This has been awesome. And for our listeners and viewers, I encourage you to go back and either listen to this again and again and again, or watch it again and again and again. You can get the transcript in the show notes and take notes, and most importantly, take action. If you do the things that Brian has shared today, I promise you that you will achieve more success than you ever thought was imaginable. And he's written over 70 books. The ones that he mentioned, $1 Million Habit is great. Eat That Frog is a great book. I love Focal Point, but any books that Brian has written is just chock full of tools and techniques and strategies to achieve success in every area of life. Brian, thank you so much for being on the show. It's great to see you as always. And I appreciate the strategies that you've shared today that will help all of us to achieve greater success in every area of life. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for tuning into Life Excellence. Please support the show by subscribing, sharing it with others, posting about today's show with Brian Tracy on social media, and leaving a rating and review. You can also learn more about me at brianbartes.com. Until next time, dream big dreams and make each day your masterpiece.